Hello, this is Zilog and Moto, and I'm your host, Dave. To all of you coming back for another heaping helping of Zilog and Moto, thank you, and I hope you'll enjoy this week's video. And to all of you coming here for the first time, thank you as well. But of course, since you probably aren't familiar with the channel, I'll sum it up quickly. I've played video games most of my life, but in, 2015, 2016, something like that, I was wandering around a Goodwill thrift store next to the gym I was a member of at the time, and in the special glass case they have for electronics and jewelry, they had Master System copies of Quartet and Afterburner. Well, being that I lived in the United States, Master System games in good condition are pretty freaking rare, and they were cheap. It was a Goodwill. So I decided, I currently have no way of playing these games, but I'm going to buy them and I'll figure out the hardware later. This was the beginning, the epicenter of my decision to collect for the Master System, Genesis, Sega CD, and 32X. Things kind of snowballed from there, and now I've got these crazy Swedish bookshelves full of stuff. Currently I'm targeting a total of 1,275 games for these platforms, and I'm about 64% of the way there, which seems crazy when you look and see how much stuff is already here, but I think I'm going to need another 3 bookshelves all told. And a bigger room, for obvious reasons. But I didn't want to just collect games. That just seems like a waste, to have all this stuff and have it just sit here. Games are made for playing, not to put in some acrylic case to never see the light of day. So instead, I decided I would start to document the collection by playing and reviewing each of these games. And here we are, 122 episodes into that journey. If this sounds interesting to you, I'd recommend you subscribe, because we're going to be covering a whole lot more than just Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage. Once a week, until I'm done, however long that takes. It's going to be a while. For this week's video, it's a game that I saw a few times in the shops after I first started collecting a few years ago, but I didn't buy it at first. I don't know why, maybe it just didn't seem that interesting to me, and I didn't want to spend the money on it because of that. But after about the second or third time I saw it, it finally clicked in my head. It's like, hey, this is something you don't see every day. You should go ahead and pick it up so you don't have to chase it down later. And that game is the software Toolworks Star Wars Chess. Yes, that name is a bit of a mouthful, so for the rest of the video, I'm just going to call it Star Wars Chess. Now, you might be thinking, who is the software Toolworks? And why is there a Star Wars game from a company besides LucasArts? I'll get into more detail about all that in a minute, but the short version is that the software Toolworks was a developer from California who produced some other games you might have heard of, like Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, Mario is Missing, and Chessmaster 2000, which would go on to be its own huge series of chess games. As far as why the game wasn't developed by LucasArts, well, it's because apparently George Lucas had licensed out the rights to develop Star Wars games to other companies in the 80s, like Atari, and LucasArts didn't get those rights back until 1993, with Star Wars Chess being one of the last games to be released under the previous agreements. So, is there anything special about Star Wars Chess? Or is it just chess with a fancy paint job? And is it even a good game of chess for that matter? Well, I'll attempt to delve into that, although admittedly I'm terrible at chess. But first, a look at the package. And this is Star Wars Chess, or I guess more specifically, the software Toolworks Star Wars Chess, as the title plainly states at the top, and on the spine as well, all within that same Star Wars font. This copy's in pretty decent shape. There's some scuffing and light scratching on the surface, but for a 27-year-old game, it could certainly look a lot worse. There's no pressure cracks on the case, and the hinges are intact at both the bottom and the top. And honestly, with these original Sega CD cases, that's about all I care about, is trying to have those bits intact. As far as the front cover is concerned, it's not bad. The artwork is decent, reflecting on the various characters that you play as on the checkered surface, with the space battle going on in the background. This is similar to the original PC cover, but that image had less information at the top and the bottom, but slightly more on the sides. Of course, if you're European, there's also their version of the cover, which has the width of the PC version, but then the height is cut down even further. Not that there's not a billion other Star Wars posters out there, but I'd be interested to see this original uncut art as one. One other thing I have to point out is the VRC rating down at the bottom, and as you can see, Sega gave this one a MA13, and yes, that's the same MA13 that Mortal Kombat got. Yikes. It's probably better that the SRB took over, because I got a hard time believing any of the animated battle sequences here are MA13 worthy, but I guess we'll find out. Flipping over the back, and the rear cover has a nice clean layout like the front. In fact, I'd almost say it looks a bit boring, as this flavor text certainly could have been broken up a bit. I've mentioned this before when looking at other releases, but no one wants to read a book when picking out a game. I'm guessing the software Toolworks, being more of a PC developer, contributed to this. There's one line that stands out though. You'll be part of your own Star Wars movie as you guide each piece to its destiny. Yeah, settle down guys, it's still just chess. Over to the side are 4 good quality screenshots from the game, with one of Chewie getting roasted by Boba Fett, then down below Luke getting electrocuted by the Emperor. Okay, well, maybe I have to retract my comment about that MA13 rating, although I should point out that when this game was released in 1994, every Star Wars property at that point had only been rated PG. Opening up the case, and the manual is nice and crisp. I love to see that. However, the staples are a little rusty, which is more of a problem on the Sega CD releases with the holes that allow air in. On the first page we got some music credits, so looks like this video is probably getting demonetized like the Star Wars arcade video did. The rest of the manual is actually pretty good. There's a lot of screenshots from the game in here, and I especially like how there's diagrams for each of the individual pieces showing how they can move, just in case you're not familiar with the basics of chess. I've got to be honest though, I still don't understand en passant. I think I might have to go watch a video on that or something. Finally, on the back, there's ads for the software Toolworks' other 2 Sega CD titles, The Animals and Mega Race, both of which do not include the software Toolworks in the name. Okay, that's the package. Let's get to the game and see how quickly I get checkmated. Spoiler alert, it's quick. When I was younger, I didn't have a PC. Or more specifically, for a number of years, I had a hand-me-down Commodore 64, but I wouldn't have my own DOS Windows machine until I was 14 or 15. So at the time, if I wanted to see some VGA multimedia gaming, it would have to be at a friend's house. One of a friend's dad was an engineer of some sort, and as a result, they had a pretty decent PC for the time, and it was the first one that I ever saw with a CD-ROM drive. One of those early models that required a plastic caddy for the discs. What does that have to do with Star Wars chess? Hang on, I'm getting there. While there were a few games that John had on that computer, only one at the time was a CD-ROM game, as they were still few and far between. That game was Battle Chess. Battle Chess was a very popular game and appeared on many different computers and even featured a horrendous-looking NES port. Seriously, don't play that. But the PC CD-ROM version featured sharp graphics that still looked good, nice animation that was a fun mix of humorous and violent, and some impressive digital speech and sound. I thought it was fantastic, and I don't even really like chess because I'm far too stupid to actually play it well. Basically, Battle Chess is what I was hoping Star Wars chess would be, except with the fantasy element removed and Star Wars in its place. And that's what it is, sort of. Before appearing on the Sega CD, Star Wars Chess first appeared for DOS and Windows 3.1. This version was a VGA version like Battle Chess, and featured a similar 3D board to play on, with a Star Wars themed background, light and dark side pieces representing the white and black players, hand-drawn animations for each of the character types, and then further battle animations that took place right on the board. Along with all that, there was also a decent soundtrack that featured sequences from the movies and digital speech to go along with each of the battles. Essentially, it was a Star Wars version of Battle Chess, although I still think I prefer the original. And if I was reviewing the PC CD-ROM version of Star Wars Chess, this would be a very different review. However, it's not. It's the Sega CD derivative, and yes, that was meant to be sound condescending. Apparently, to put the game on the Sega CD, numerous alterations had to be made. The first and most obvious one is the fact that the game has to run at a much lower resolution, with Star Wars Chess now running at the Sega CD default of 320 by 224 instead of 640 by 480. For certain games, this isn't that big a deal, usually action games that focus more on quick action than small details. For instance, while the arcade version of Arch Rivals looks better than the Genesis version, it still feels like the same game. Star Wars Chess, on the other hand, only resembles the original PC version if you squint really hard and to try to avoid all the pixels. While there's no mistaking which characters are which, with R2-D2 still looking like R2-D2 for instance, it's just painful to look at, versus the very nicely hand-drawn frames that are in the original game. And even if the characters still have a passing resemblance to the original game, all of the wonderful animation that was in that original title is gone. That's right, it's all gone. No longer do the characters move around the board from square to square like a cartoon character. Instead, now they just teleport to where they are placed. Also, like in Battle Chess, in the original version of Star Wars Chess, when a piece is taken, an animated combat sequence takes place directly on the board, and then the game proceeds on to the next move. This isn't the case with the Sega CD version. Instead of those combat sequences taking place in the existing game engine, the game pauses, switches to a scene of stars moving across the screen, and then after a few seconds, a FMV version of that combat scene plays in the center of the screen, before eventually switching back to the game board for the next move. The only good thing I can say about this is that because you're watching a video instead of seeing the animation play out on the board in engine, the scene is enlarged, taking up more of the screen than it normally would. However, if you're familiar at all with other FMV games on the console, while having the scene take up a larger portion of the screen is nice in theory, the video is still incredibly grainy and in low color, and doesn't necessarily show any more detail than you would see in the character sprites on the main board. The whole process is disjointed, with the teleporting in and out of the battle scenes, along with the movement on the board. There's an option to disable the battle scenes if you want, to keep things strictly chess with a Star Wars paint job, but then that's all you're left with, a video chess game that, somewhat awkwardly structured in a pseudo 3D environment, that can make it hard to tell where the pieces actually are on the board. Yes, that's right, even the board is screwed up. In the original PC version, the board is tilted at more of an angle, where on the Sega CD version, it's flatter. It's an admittedly small change, but due to the squares being narrower, they can stack up on top of each other and make it hard to tell where your pieces can move to, which is, of course, hugely important in chess where position is everything. I could go on about some of the other graphical differences in the game, like how the ship-themed background has been replaced by a bland, black, starred background matching the loading sequences, the title screen that just looks atrocious and sets a bad precedent for the rest of the game, the amazingly grainy intro title scroll that's very difficult to read and looks far worse than what was present in Star Wars Arcade for the 32X, and the aforementioned poor coloring, which honestly is more of a technical limitation than anything else. But I think I've made it clear that, at least from a display perspective, Star Wars Chess is a pale imitation of the PC original. Let's move on. If we concentrate on just the actual game of chess, Star Wars Chess is competent. Along with disabling the battle scenes, you can also switch the game from the pseudo 3D representation to a strict top-down view of the chessboard at any time by pressing the B button, giving a view much more like a traditional video chess game from the era, and one that looks more like the software Toolworks' other chess franchise, Chessmaster. It's very basic and probably not befitting the power of the Sega CD, but I actually like how this looks, with red and blue pieces subbing for the traditional white and black. From this mode, you also have access to other options, like undoing moves if you made a mistake, viewing which pieces have been captured, forcing the other player to make a move if you think they're taking too long, and even the ability to switch sides if you want, perhaps if you're getting hammered or want more of a challenge. Then there's also the actual options screen, where you can change things like if a side is being controlled by a human or the computer, and how strong a player they are, the colors of the tiles on the board,
which side is at the top of the screen, and even changing which way the pieces at the bottom of the screen are looking. I guess if you get tired of looking at their backs? I don't know, I tried this briefly, and it just looked weird having both sides looking in your direction. Also, if you're pressed for time, you can save a game in progress and then load it back later to finish up. Finally, and I thought this was really cool, even though it's a feature I would never use in a million years, there's the ability to set the board when starting a game, laying out pieces in any legal fashion, giving you the option of setting up chess puzzles to solve and play through when you want to do something besides just play a game. It's safe to say the actual chess portion of Star Wars Chess, the software Toolworks, got correct. But again, with games like Chessmaster 3000 in their arsenal at that point, it would be more noteworthy if they somehow screwed that up as well. From a gameplay perspective, as you can imagine, there's not exactly a ton to discuss. This is chess, not Archon. And if you get that reference, I hope you're as annoyed by getting AARP junk mail as I am. But having said that, the game does have control issues. For some odd reason, there seems to be a delay in moving the cursor around the screen. And just having a delay wouldn't be that big a deal, but the controls are also overly sensitive, meaning that you have to be very careful about not holding in one direction for too long, or else the cursor will move too far on the screen. I've tested this with 2 separate controllers, just to make sure it wasn't a weird controller issue, and both had the same problem, so this is definitely a game engine fault. The entirety of a chess video game is choosing pieces on a board, and then choosing the places on the board for them to move to. So this is akin to having a Sonic the Hedgehog game where jumping is horribly inaccurate. Sure, with enough trial and error you can learn to deal with it, and thankfully it's not an action or platformer that relies on split-second button presses, but I just have to ask, how do you mess this up? And what's more, how do you ship a game like this, where literally as soon as someone does something as simple as attempting to navigate the options screen, they're gonna have problems? The in-game sound performs poorly as well, and like the control issue, I'm absolutely mystified by it. The PC version has no issues with this, with samples during combat playing as you would expect. But with the game switching to FMV sequences, the audio appears to be downsampled as much as the video, with digital effects sounding subpar, and for instance, Darth Vader's lines are near incomprehensible. One of the strengths of every Sega CD game that I've played so far for the channel has been its audio, relying either on the expanded storage nature of the medium or simply playing WAV audio files. So hearing Star Wars Chess struggle in this regard is a massive head-scratcher. All in all, Star Wars Chess is simply a huge disappointment. I understand when other PC ports aren't quite as good as the original version. Say, for instance, The Adventures of Willie Beamish that I looked at in episode 60. But even in that instance, other than the weird kitchen bug I ran into, the game was perfectly playable and closely resembled the original game. But this time around, really the only thing that the software Toolworks got right was arguably its easiest part, which is the actual chess portion of the game. Due to its truly disappointing nature, I have no choice but to give the software Toolworks Star Wars Chess 1 star. I would have given it 2, but the fact that the controls suck as well as everything else that's wrong with it is just the nail in the coffin for me.
Okay, that was Star Wars Chess. And this review is the stereotypical why I review games. On paper, Star Wars Chess for the Sega CD is a great idea, and based on what I've seen on YouTube, the PC version isn't a bad game, minus the fact that they somehow managed to make a Star Wars game with Chewbacca but not Han Solo, or a host of other characters. But regardless, I could see someone who's a fan of both Star Wars and chess enjoying the original game. I'm actually scared to review Mega Race now, also from the software Toolworks, because I'm anticipating more of these shenanigans. Next week on Zilog and Moto, it's Mega Drive time. And I do mean Mega Drive in that I'm reviewing a European exclusive racing title that I've been very curious about since learning about its existence on the Mega Drive. As while the Mega Drive version wasn't released in the United States, the original version for the Super Nintendo was. And that game has some features that, honestly, I didn't think the Genesis/Mega Drive was capable of, So I'm really curious as to see how this turns out. And it'll be the first time I'm playing a PAL title on my new setup as well, so no idea what to expect there as well. It'll be fine though, I'm sure. I think. Please remember to subscribe if you like this video, and remember, whatever you like to play, have fun, and be excellent to each other. Later.